Hello, and I'm back again with Now 6. This is the second album from 1985. Unlike 1984 and most years where there's 3 Now albums, in 85 they were down to 2. Still, obviously, at this time they had no idea, I'm assuming it'd still be going on way into the 2020s now. So this will be the 5th decade of Now music, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s and 20s. Wow. I've also thought of some individual songs that I'm going to be doing talks about. I want to try and do one on Prince, When Doves Cry. I'm contemplating doing one on maybe Ghost Town by the Specials. So I'm just doing some research at the moment. I don't want to be over-researched, but dittily for the individual songs, dittily, is that even a word? There's no point being clueless. So I'm going to bone up on some good, useful info. And we'll do these individual song videos shortly. Meanwhile, Now 6. So, if you remember in my last video, I said that 85 was the year of 2 halves, and this is generally seen by the music industry as the year in which CDs were now really coming into their own. They'd been out for a couple of years, but the opportunity to re-release on on CD, stuff that had not been available, that had only been available on vinyl or cassette. Live Aid happened in the summer, and as a result of that, you had a huge demand. We could talk about the ethics of the whole thing. A concert for starving people in Africa, then used to sell millions of CDs. That's a whole other debate in itself. I mixed feelings about Live Aid. I do feel it was incredibly... I do feel it incredibly important in terms of raising awareness to this day about the problems in Africa. But I see the other side as well. There's the dangers of sort of victim complex of giving people fish instead of teaching them how to fish, if you like. And I think probably the excess of the Live Aid construct was probably most captured by Phil Collins jetting all the way from Wembley to Philadelphia so he could appear on both stages. But it would be churlish to totally criticise it. It did do an awful lot of good, and I think most people had good intentions. And Queen in particular were one of the highlights of the festival. Really, really good performance. Probably, almost definitely the best performance of Live Aid. If you're going to see any videos of it, look up Queen. The peak of their powers, and also I gather probably not that long before Freddie found out that he was ill. So the last real time when Queen was still... I think they did a couple more albums after this, but Freddie was getting iller and iller, so this is really almost the peak of his physical powers. One Vision was a standalone song inspired by Live Aid. Now, Queen blotted their copybook rather, because after all that goodwill, they went and played Sun City in South Africa, which was a famous or an infamous whites-only venue. And I gather Queen were pretty defensive about this, and they had their own reasons for doing it. But there was a big anti-Sun City movement, and there was even a song, Ain't Gonna Play Sun City. And obviously, at the end of the apartheid era, I don't know if the venue's still there, or it changed its policy. So we kick Now 6 with Queen's One Vision, and despite the controversies, despite maybe a misjudgment in playing that, at the end of the day, Freddie himself isn't even Caucasian, is he? Really, he's Indian, so I don't think anyone could accuse Queen of being racist or anything. But the 80s was a different time. Look into it, make your own mind up, let me know what you think. I'm just telling you about the music. Number 2, When a Heart Beats, Nick Kershaw. This really isn't one of Nick's most memorable songs. I think it pretty much passed the peak, and this song struggled to even make it into the top 40. It's very much now starting to look like he's had his day, which is amazing considering 2 or 3 albums ago he was a real hot property. And I'm not hating on Nick, I'm just talking about the fickleness of fame and the changing fashions, really, because I guess this is really the beginning of the late 80s now, midway through 1985. Number 3, Fergal Sharkey, A Good Heart. Now, he really was starting to have a renaissance following the Undertones and his scruffy urchin look. He'd really kind of revamped in expensive suits and stuff. Very kind of typical of the yuppie era in a way, culturally. A Good Heart had $1 million backing track. I think Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics produced it. And the song was actually written by Maria McKee originally. So it's a number one hit. Even at the time where you felt like this is just basically spend enough money and you can buy yourself a hit record. But that's not to deny it. It's a really well-crafted song. It's a very good pop song, really. Just maybe a bit stuck in the 80s. Hasn't really moved with the decade. Number 4, There Must Be an Angel, Playing With My Heart. Eurythmics. Well, I think Annie Lennox's voice is absolutely one of the most astounding sort of sonic archetypes of the 80s, if you like. Let's play it. This is Here Comes the Rain. This is There Must Be an Angel. I believe this might have been their only actual number one. They didn't have many, and it's probably not one of their most well-known songs. It's a bit out of character for them in a way. In anyone else's hands, it would be incredibly twee. All this stuff about angels, and remember me talking about Phil Spector in Video 1 and all that angelic orchestras and stuff. Well, it works here. Why does it work? Because of her voice. I think it's still got the electronics in there. It's got lots of synths and stuff. Very well crafted song. Very good chord sequence. It's also got Mouth Organ by Stevie Wonder, harmonica even. So it's a kind of all-encompassing affair, and it's pretty OTT. I'd say it's Annie Lennox's voice that makes this survive. Her voice is so angelic and beautiful that they don't need a lot of kind of silliness to achieve that effect. But you can hear those voices in the background. Oh. So it skirts the very border of what's acceptable, but it just gets away with it. And in a way, that's what makes great pop music. It's on the border of being totally cheesy or totally naff. Just pulls back, just from crossing that line. Very good songwriting. Okay, number 5, Alive and Kicking, Simple Minds. I was gushing over Don't You Forget About Me. Alive and Kicking has kind of gone back to normal Simple Minds, really. It's not bad, it's very professional, very slick, very well produced. Just a bit humourless, really, a bit dry. Number 6, interesting duet, Tina Turner with Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams' first appearance on one of these albums. And it's a song called It's Only Love. It's actually a really, really good song. It's one of the best things that both of them have ever done, and it's a classic case of a duet bringing out the best in both performers and giving a real chemistry. So even if you don't like Tina Turner, even if you don't like Bryan Adams, I think you'd have to acknowledge It's Only Love is just a really good song. Really, really good, strong song. Number 7, Empty Rooms by Gary Moore. Ex-Thin Lizzy guitarist. Duetted with Phil Lynott on Out in the Fields. Empty Rooms, pretty forgotten song now. Not really a lot to say about it, a bit dull. God or Bennett. You see, I'm starting to see a pattern with this album now. This album is definitely going very middle of the road. And it's probably the most middle of the road of all the nows so far. Is that a reflection of 85, post-Live Aid? Because what follows next is another Marillion song, Lavender Blue, which is basically a nursery rhyme for 3-year-olds. Lavender's blue, dilly dilly, lavender's blue, or whatever. It's sorry to hate on Marillion, but their music was so bad. Just like nursery rhymes done up in like progressive rock. Oh god, Emperor's New Clothes or what? Right, number 9, Nikita Elton. First question, is Nikita a woman or a man? But that's a whole other question. Russian person, either way. It's a good song, actually. This is Elton doing what he does best. A kind of story, narrative song, basically on the piano, but it's got some nice synths in it. It's unpretentious. Obviously, it's got the kind of Russian sound in a maybe slightly kind of hackneyed way, but it's just a great song. It's as Elton at its best, a really well crafted song, great chords, great melody, good arrangement. Number 10, another classic, Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush. This was her first appearance on the Now, and it was her first hit for years, and it was very much kind of modernisation of her sound right into the 80s. Great lyrics. I believe it is kind of about gender, and I believe the deal with God is to swap being a woman for a man. But you know, I don't want to be dogmatic about what these songs mean. Let's stick it on, and you can make your own mind up. Their sisters are doing it for themselves, which is kind of relevant to the same topic, really. So, 1985, we're starting to see, kind of gender empowerment. There were lots of very, very very prominent pop ladies in this time. Annie Lennox, Kate Bush, obviously Madonna was at the height of her fame. So sisters were really doing it for themselves. Something About You next, not UB40, similar, level 42, getting the numbers there. Something About You was the first level 42 song to be a bit more kind of poppy and maybe commercial after Hot Water. And it's still actually a really good song. It's very well crafted. It's kind of a bit middle of the road, but it's funky. I wouldn't switch it off if it came on at all. Right, number 12, We Don't Need Another Hero. Tina Turner, yet again. She's certainly having hits and hits and hits in this time. The song itself is one of her more drab ones. It was from a Mad Max movie, and it's got kind of children singing along. So it's a big movie theme, but it's not really played a lot nowadays. 13, Don't Break My Heart by UB40. Still cracking on. They're maybe sort of past their peak a bit now. But Don't Break My Heart, that's pretty spooky for them. Quite dark, quite kind of eerie. And yeah, it's actually a really good song. So it's maybe not the most well-known song I've done, but it's certainly one of the better ones. 14... Phil Collins again and someone called Marillion Martin, Separate Lives, big ballad, Phil Collins with female guest. I think again it was from a movie, very bland. Now talking of bland, Cliff, She's So Beautiful, which is so syrupy. Stevie Wonder, who is a kind of renter guest quite a lot here, again he's on this one. I think he might have even written it and done backing vocals. It's quite an interesting idea of a collab, Cliff and Stevie. Stevie really not at his best in this time. It's just a very syrupy song. Okay, we go on to side 3 now, and we start with Arcadia, who I talked about in the last one by saying Duran started having all these spin-off bands. And Election Day is a good song, but it's very kind of like a Duran Duran B-side, really. It pretty much sounds like Duran Duran. It's a bit of a slog, but I actually like it. I think it's pretty well produced, and it's got a cameo by Grace Jones in it. 17, I Got You Babe, another collab. There seems to be a lot of these duets, and this is UB40 again, we only just had them, with Chrissy Hind, and this song made number 1. This is UB40 digging further into their covers ditch. Sonny and Cher song, so not even a reggae song. It's an adequate cover, but I think this is really what people think of when they think of UB40, just doing kind of covers by numbers. Chrissy Hind, obviously from Pretenders, always interesting to hear what she sings, and she adds to it. They've got a bit of chemistry there, and they went on to do another duet called Breakfast in Bed. Number 18, Blue by the Fine Young Cannibals. And I always find it very interesting how in Britain and America the kind of colours of the parties are almost the other way round. So obviously blue in America would mean Democrat, over here Conservatives. A very, very obvious anti-Tory song. Very political, actually. I don't even think it was a top 40 hit, maybe too obviously political. But it certainly captured up the feeling that a lot of people had. I'm trying to stay unbiased here and let you make your own minds up. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong. What I am saying is they felt something, they didn't like Thatcher, they put that into music, and that comes across well musically. And you don't have to agree with the point of view, of a songwriter to really feel what they're feeling when they write it. So respect. If I Was, this song made number one for mid-year, and it's very, very kind of big and bloated. Another real Alan Partridge-y kind of one. It's just pompous. I thought it was, even when I was a kid, I thought this was a pompous song. It's like, it's kind of saving the world song. Again, very post Live Aid. It's got that kind of, how can you put it? Just a sort of cultural imperialism thing going on there, really. But, you know, we sort of go out to Africa once and then we want to go and save the world. And I don't want to be cynical, because I'm not saying, you know, like we should just sort of leave poor people to suffer. Far from it. I'm all for doing stuff to help. But, I'm not the only one who said that let's say virtue is at its best when it's unseen. What makes something really virtuous is that no one knows you're doing it. Of course, if no one knows you're doing it, then people think nothing's being done. So I get the thing of raising awareness. It's a balancing act. And I think in the early days, a lot of his charity things really did mean well, and I still think a lot do. But I think there is an overreach that can happen. So critical thinking. Anyway, where were we? We're now 6. We're on the final side, and we've got Siouxsie and the Banshees, and this is Cities in Dust. I believe this song is about Vesuvius or about volcanoes. Could be wrong. This is a great song. This is Siouxsie really finding her stride in the mid-80s. Possibly my favourite song so far on this album. Definitely the most alternative. We've had some pretty safe stuff. And this one's very much I forgot what I was going to say. Oh dear. Yeah, Cities in Dust. Yeah, it's just probably the best song so far on the album. It's the most out there. Probably the least obviously commercial, and a lot of them very bland. 21. Uncle Sam, Madness. They're back again after a bit of a break. Something's not quite the same. It's still superficially a typical Madness song. Still very jaunty. But they just seem to have kind of lost their popularity a bit by this point. They've lost their mojo. But actually, it's as good a song as anything they've ever done. I think there's more stuff about gender in the lyrics. Don't really know what it's about. Obviously, Uncle Sam makes you think it's about America. It's a interesting one for debate. If you've got any ideas what you think Uncle Sam's all about. 22, another good song. Lost Weekend. This is Lloyd Cole and the Commotions. Another one that's kind of bordering on alternative, but it's still a very catchy kind of pop song. Lots of kind of jaunty accordions, mysterious lyrics about a lost weekend in a hotel in Amsterdam. Good song. Right, 23, You Are My World, the Communards. By this point, Jimmy Somerville has left Bronski Beat, and You Are My World temporarily saw the Communards go off on a very different direction before they'd soon come back to the kind of synth pop sound. This is more kind of easy listening, Radio 2, very, very sugary. It's okay actually. It's very self-indulgent and flowery and incredibly gay. It's one of the most gay songs of all time, but you know, it is what it is. It's honest. Take it or leave it, really. Right, Just for Money, Paul Hardcastle. This is a weird one. This was to follow up to No 19, and he's actually used a couple of actors doing stuff specially for it, rather than samples. It's even got Laurence Olivier on there, and it's got Bob Hoskins. Now, anything with Bob Hoskins and Laurence Olivier is going to be interesting. So the acting's top notch. And it's a song about robberies, like the Great Train robbery and stuff. And he's got these kind of spoken word bits. Thing with Paul Hardcastle, he put the kind of naff female vocals. So he'd have this really sort of serious stuff, either about Vietnam or about robberies and stuff. And then he'd go and have these female singers going like, "All the people got robbed, oh, they lost their money." And it's a weird juxtaposition. Production, very 80s, very, very, very mid-80s. Now, talking of mid-80s productions, We've got another instrumental now. I'll stick a bit of it on. One of the biggest shows of the 80s was, of course, Miami Vice. And the theme song, which was actually really short, and not really a pop song at all, to be honest. It's by Jan Hammer. Here we go. This takes you straight back. It kind of feels a bit out of place on a Now album. But this is very much the sound of 1985 sonically. So if you want to hear what 1985 sounds like, you can do worse than the Miami Vice theme. Followed by something in a similar vein, but more of a song, Body Rock by Maria Vidal. Kind of Madonna-ish, fairly high energy, American, dancey, but with kind of rocky edge to it. And that's followed by Tarzan Boy, Baltimore, which was a big Euro song. Whoa. Yeah, it's a novelty song in a very Eurobeat style, but pretty good. I liked it. Kind of guilty pleasure. Next up, we have Body and Soul by Mai Tai, which was a slightly less successful follow-up to History. Kind of Euro soul, I'd call that, I suppose, if I had to call it anything. It's essentially soul, but it's quite cheesy in Euro. And we follow that one by Cameo. Now, Cameo, they'd been around since the 70s, and they'd started off as a kind of P-Funk band. In the 80s, what they did was they really stripped down their sound to make a kind of robotic funk sound. This is Single Life. They had this sort of trademark whistling sound. The singer's called Larry Blackman. Yeah, I like this. Dubious lyrics. It's one of those things where it's a bit like, me thinks you protest too much. I don't quite know. There's something a bit weird about the lyrics. I just like having fun. I suppose, you know, we're talking about the height of the 80s and the AIDS thing. And so attitudes to sex and obviously to polygamy and sleeping around were kind of coming under scrutiny. And I think that's why this song is kind of defensive. Single Life. He's sort of standing up for sleeping around in a way, in a time where it was maybe coming under, scrutiny for its social implications. So I could be wrong about it. I like it. I think it's a good song. But yeah, it feels a bit defensive in the lyrics. Like, all right, okay. Right, following that one is another song, I guess, about sex. It's called Mated, which is a bit of a kind of gross title, really. Makes it sound like insects. And it's David Grant and Jackie Graham. Very, very middle-of-the-road soul ballad. And I think, all in all, that's how I'd sum up this one, Now 6. It's incredibly middle-of-the-road, noticeably so. Especially after Now 5 started to take a few chances and put a bit of kind of slightly more underground soul on it, like Loose Ends, Steve Arrington, Conway Brothers. It's like they've kind of reversed back out of that alley and they're playing it really safe. And there's a couple of kind of slightly undergroundy ones on here. Not really, actually, to be honest. If the most underground song is Paul Hardcastle, then... if there's anything that's experimental and off the wall here, it's more in the indie post-punk direction. Lloyd Cole and Siouxsie and the Banshees. So they're probably two of the standout songs. What else stood the test of time? Oh, One Vision by Queens, up there still. There Must Be an Angel, Eurythmics, still. I think Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush, that's an absolute classic. Then there's a lot that you just skim right over. Separate Lives, She's So Beautiful, I Got You Babe, If I Was, Uncle Sam's Second Rate Madness. So really, actually, in a way, this is possibly one of the weakest yet, if not the weakest. And it's definitely feels like, you know, what was fairly vibrant at the beginning of the 80s is sort of dead now. And what would pick up in the second half of the 80s hasn't really picked up yet. So very much a kind of placeholder on that. Now 6, but let me know what you think.